The world is watching. The US is eyeing Greenland, a massive island rich in resources, strategically located in the Arctic. This is more than just a territorial dispute. It's a high-stakes game where the future of international relations, trade, and global security is on the line. Imagine this, a world where nations collide, trade wars ignite, and the balance of power shifts in unpredictable ways. If the US moves forward with its annexation plans for Greenland, the consequences could be felt across continents, shaking the foundations of alliances and economies. But what happens when diplomacy fails? What happens when the US refuses to back down? Let's dive into the heart of this escalating tension. Stay with me as we unravel the layers of this crisis and how it could reshape our future. To understand the depth of this conflict, we must first look at what's at stake here, the true motivations driving this move. At first glance, it may seem like just another geopolitical squabble, but it's much more. The US isn't simply seeking territory, it's positioning itself to control emerging global trade routes, secure valuable mineral resources, and assert dominance in the Arctic, a region rapidly growing in strategic importance. This isn't about land for land's sake, it's about securing the future. US President Donald Trump has been vocal, pushing for Greenland's annexation, citing national security concerns. But these ambitions could trigger far-reaching consequences, both for the US and its allies. The tensions reached a boiling point when the US, Denmark, and Greenland failed to reach an agreement after talks. Greenland, though self-governing, is politically connected. It's a self-governing territory of Denmark, a member of the European Union, and that's where the complication begins. To understand the global repercussions, we need to explore the history behind these tensions and how they've led to this critical moment. The tension over Greenland isn't new. Historically, Greenland has held strategic importance, especially during the Cold War, when the US established military bases on the island. But it was never truly under US control. It remained a part of Denmark, and with Denmark being a NATO member, Greenland's sovereignty remained largely unquestioned until now. The world has changed, and with it the dynamics of global power. The Arctic, once seen as a frozen wasteland, is becoming a geopolitical battleground. Trade routes are opening up due to melting ice, and Greenland sits in the center of this new frontier. The push for Greenland's annexation isn't just about history, it's about the future. It's about what the US sees as its right to secure access to resources and influence over an increasingly important region. But how does the world respond when one nation stakes such a claim? Let's look at the fallout from this ambition, starting with the first sign of crisis. The first cracks in the facade of diplomacy appeared when US President Donald Trump publicly intensified his push for Greenland's annexation. Talks between the US, Denmark, and Greenland ended without resolution, and the rhetoric grew sharper. What began as a diplomatic disagreement quickly escalated into something far more dangerous. Trump's remarks about potentially using force to acquire Greenland sent shockwaves through the global community. The idea of a sovereign nation, Denmark, losing control over its territory rattled Europe, especially considering Greenland's connection to the European Union. The prospect of a US invasion, though still distant, sparked urgent conversations in European capitals. French Finance Minister Roland Lescure raised the stakes, warning that economic ties between the US and Europe could be severely damaged. The possibility of sanctions, tariffs, and even a trade war loomed. This wasn't just about Greenland anymore, it was about the survival of international norms and the fragile relationships between the US and its European allies. The US may have underestimated how deeply this would disrupt the global order. But what if the next move is even more devastating? Let's examine what lies beneath the surface of this crisis, the hidden mechanisms driving these decisions. What's truly at stake here goes beyond territorial control. It's about the forces that shape global power. The US's interest in Greenland isn't just driven by national security concerns or a desire to control emerging trade routes. It's part of a broader strategy to maintain economic and geopolitical dominance. The Arctic, with its melting ice, is opening up new shipping lanes, and Greenland is in the perfect position to control access to these vital trade routes. But there's more. Beneath the surface lies the lure of Greenland's vast mineral wealth, particularly rare earth elements and other minerals crucial for industries like defense, technology, and clean energy. The U.S. sees this as an opportunity to secure critical resources that are becoming increasingly scarce and strategically essential. This is the mechanism that could propel the U.S. to take drastic action. It's not about claiming a piece of land, it's about securing a future in an increasingly unstable global economy. But as tensions rise, the crisis deepens. The second wave of escalation is about to hit. As tensions over Greenland's future continue to build, the situation takes a more dangerous turn. European powers, unwilling to sit idly by, begin to respond. European troops arrive in Greenland for a collaborative military exercise, a clear signal to the U.S. that this is no longer just a Danish issue, it's a matter of collective security. This military move marks a sharp escalation, signaling that European nations are prepared to take action to defend Greenland, not just diplomatically but with force if necessary. Simultaneously, the European Union shows its cards. The European Commission proposes a significant increase in its financial support for Greenland, pledging more economic and political backing for the island. This move, though subtle, sends a strong message. Greenland's future will not be determined by the U.S. alone. Now, with military and political forces converging, the effects on the people of Greenland and the wider world become impossible to ignore. For the people of Greenland, this isn't just a distant political conflict, it's personal. The island's residents are caught in the middle of a battle they never asked for. Greenland, though self-governing, is heavily dependent on Denmark and its relationships with the broader European Union. The looming threat of U.S. annexation has created a sense of unease and uncertainty among the population. The people here are wondering, what does the future hold for them? Will they be dragged into a geopolitical struggle that leaves their homes and livelihoods in jeopardy? In response, European leaders have been quick to offer their support, making it clear that Greenland's sovereignty will be defended. But this doesn't erase the fear that the U.S. could go further, could attempt to seize Greenland despite international condemnation. For many, the prospect of a trade war or even military conflict is no longer abstract. It's a very real threat that could alter their way of life. The human cost of this crisis is undeniable. It's a reminder that behind every geopolitical struggle there are real people whose lives hang in the balance. But the effects of this conflict reach far beyond Greenland. The global ramifications are becoming clearer by the day. The ripples from this escalating conflict are already spreading far beyond Greenland's shores. The U.S.'s push for annexation has sent shockwaves through Europe, igniting fears of a breakdown in transatlantic relations. If the U.S. goes through with its plans, it would not only strain its relationship with Denmark, but could also put the future of NATO at risk. For years, NATO has been a cornerstone of European and North American security. But what happens when an ally, the U.S., directly challenges European sovereignty? On a broader scale, this conflict is already reshaping global trade. The European Union has made it clear that any move to seize Greenland could result in economic retaliation, tariff sanctions, and potentially a trade war. The interconnectedness of global economies means that what begins as a political standoff could quickly turn into a financial crisis affecting markets, businesses, and consumers across the world. But as the stakes continue to rise, what does the future look like? Let's explore three possible scenarios. As this crisis unfolds, the future is uncertain. Will this conflict escalate into full-blown economic warfare, or can diplomacy salvage some semblance of peace? There are three possible paths forward. First, the best-case scenario, diplomacy prevails. The U.S. backs down, and talks with Denmark and Greenland lead to an agreement that acknowledges Greenland's sovereignty while allowing for cooperation on security and trade in the Arctic. The tensions cool, and the U.S. and Europe are able to strengthen their alliance in the face of growing global challenges. Second, a more middle ground scenario. The US presses forward with its territorial ambitions, but the European Union responds with swift economic sanctions. This sets off a trade war that damages economies on both sides of the Atlantic, but without escalating into direct military conflict. The damage is done, but the global order is maintained, albeit at a high cost. Third, the worst-case scenario. The US presses its claim with military force, and Europe retaliates in kind. Greenland becomes the flashpoint for a wider conflict, pulling in NATO allies and destabilizing the Arctic region. Global markets plummet, and the political ramifications echo for decades. No matter the outcome, one thing is clear: this crisis will leave a permanent mark on the global stage. Let's close with some final thoughts. As we look toward the future, one thing is certain: the situation in Greenland is far more than just a territorial dispute. It's a turning point in global politics, trade, and alliances. Whether it leads to a new era of cooperation or a devastating conflict, the impact will be felt around the world. But there's more at play here than just the fate of Greenland. This crisis challenges the very idea of international sovereignty and the limits of what nations can claim in the name of national security. It asks the question: how far will one country go to maintain its dominance in a rapidly changing world? The choices made in the coming months will define the future of global relations, security, and trade for generations. The time for inaction has passed. We must pay attention. This is not just about Greenland, it's about the future we want to build together. Stay informed, stay engaged. The world is changing fast, and what happens next could reshape everything we know. Tune in for our next analysis, where we'll dive deeper into the long-term implications of this conflict on the global economy.